Let's begin with a little meditation. Clean out my mind, your mind. Sit comfortably. Place your attention, as we've been training to do, on the breathing. And then bring your attention to your mental consciousness, one part of the mind, watching at first the contents, but not focusing on the contents of the mind, focusing instead on the nature, clear light between, around the thoughts. whatever thoughts come to mind, again and again, let go of them. Recalling that our ability to avoid harming ourselves, avoiding creating negative karma, and our ability to help others, help ourselves, help others, depends very much on our understanding of emptiness, to go beyond just the superficial level, to be, for instance, a caregiver, a helper, a teacher, beyond the ordinary worldly sense of the word, someone with transcendental insight that doesn't get caught up and affected by expectations about results, criticisms, transference, and so forth. So with that motivation to be able to benefit ourselves and others, I'm going to try to recognize the object of negation, of personal selflessness. So with your quiet mind, see if you can instigate the sense of I, if need be. Not a sense of I that's pervasive with the body or with the mind. Such mental images, such conceptions of the I are not the subtle, most enduring, innate form of the sense of I. A sense of I when you have been falsely accused or irritated, or strongly desire something. Try to place your attention on how that's appearing without causing it to disappear. Because if you focus too much on that sense of I, the experience is that it as though slips away. See if you can recognize its appearance as on an equal footing to the other aggregates, the 5 aggregates, but not exactly identical to any of them, not identifying the I as the body or the feelings or discrimination or wisdom or consciousness and so forth. Almost as though the experiencer, the controller, existing here from its own side, subtly appearing innate sense of the I, not merely a self-supporting, substantially existent I. The mere sense of I seemingly findable from its own side. I think if such an I existed inherently like this from its own side, findable, it would have to be inherently findable, so forth, one with the aggregates, the five aggregates, or different than the aggregates, inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different from them. In fact, if anything exists, we could choose a rose as the basis. Say if anything exists, it would have to be one with the rose or different than the rose. If anything inherently existed, it would have to be inherently one with the rose or inherently different than the rose. But here we choose the basis, the aggregates, for a very skillful, particular reason. If the I that's appearing did exist the way that it appears, it would have to be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different. If it were inherently different than the aggregates, it would have no relationship to them whatsoever. If our body suffered some experience or had a positive experience, we wouldn't say that I'm hurt or I feel good. We couldn't identify with the aggregates at all. There'd be no connection if it was inherently different. If it was inherently the same as the aggregates, as there are five aggregates, there would have to be five I's. Or as there is one I, there'd have to be one aggregate. Even if you thought, well, the other aggregates are not the real I is just the one aggregate of consciousness, even that has parts. There would have to be I's of your positive minds, I's of your selves of your negative mind, past mind, present mind, future mind, many different I's, all unrelated to one another. So if the I had to be, if it existed, had to be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different, and it's neither of those, therefore this I that's appearing to our mind doesn't exist the way that it appears. There's no such I findable like that from its own side existing. Recognizing that fact, meditate for a few moments on space-like emptiness. Just let go of that sense of I with some conviction that we have refuted its existence. It doesn't exist at all. The troublesome I that's caused us to be proud or to be jealous, to be anxious, to be acquisitive, to be lustful, to be angry, doesn't exist at all. And then, as Avalokiteshvara says in the Heart Sutra, the same applies also for the aggregates, the five aggregates, the basis of designating the I. Think of your body aggregate. Right now, the form of your body appearing to your mind's eye as one whole, if you just consider the body, my body. But where is such a body? If such a body existed, it would have to be either one with a collection of parts of the body, it would have to be identical, inherently one with those parts, or inherently different. A metaphysical, inherently different body, different than the parts, is absurd. Would have no relationship to the parts. That's not what our mind is conceiving of. If the body were one with the parts, there would have to be either many bodies or many parts, because there are recognizably arms and shoulders and heads and chests and bellies and legs and ankles, toes. Like the self, the body, the form aggregate, is just a concept. It does not inherently exist. Likewise, the feelings have parts. Think of a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling in your continuum right now. If that inherently existed as something inherently good, inherently pleasurable, inherently unpleasant, it would have to be inherently one with the instances in which we label that feeling over some period of time, which has many parts, or inherently different, just like the body. The discriminations, mental factors, the other compositional factors, even bare consciousness itself, primary consciousness, is not inherently existing. There are no inherent goals to attain, no inherent obstacles to abandon. No inherently existing obstacles or laziness in our mind. With that insight and its consequences, the potential that we can develop within our mind, because it's not inherently existing, all good qualities, compassion, actual bodhicitta, patience, ethics, so forth. With that thought in mind, let's recite the praise of the perfection of wisdom, the mother, wisdom gone beyond. Ma sam je me sherab paro chin mai ke minga nam ke ngo ni so rang rin yes chu Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharitvati Putra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, and not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, and no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tadyata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you've indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharitvati Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So, any questions? Yes. Oh. Heart Sutra explain.
On page, I think, 50. I need to get.
You need glasses open?
Yeah, 39. In the middle of the page, it's talking when it's talking about the 22 similes that illustrate its nature. Anyway, right below that, it talks about 3 kinds of omniscience.
22 syllables, similes, which illustrate what nature?
Let me see.
Nature of emptiness?
I don't know. Describing something.
Bodhicitta, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's talking about 22 types of bodhicitta.
But it's below that. It's right there, right above the 3rd line above the break here in the text.
Yeah. What does it say?
It says the 3 kinds of omniscience.
Mm-hmm.
It says, it is like fire because it burns and consumes the obstruction to the 3 kinds of omniscience. Why are 3 omnisciences? I thought there were, I thought there were 2.
You thought there were 2?
Well, yeah, the omniscience, the obstructions to omniscience.
You thought there were 2 kinds of obstructions to omniscience?
No. But anyway, why are there 3 omnisciences?
Yeah, what's it saying here? He's translating. Abhi Samaya Alamkara. Abhi Samaya Alamkara. Alamkara means ornament. So the ornament of Abhi Samaya. Abhi, like Abhidharma?
Yeah.
Abhi Samaya is translated different ways. Sometimes translated as clear realizations. The ornament of clear realizations is one of the 5 texts composed by Maitreya to explain what? Do you know, Venerable? Abhi Samaya Alamkara? Who knows? Who's our scholar here? What's it? Abhisamaya is a commentary to what? Do you know?
Commentary, but doesn't it explain the 5 paths?
It explains the 5 paths, yeah. But it's a commentary to. It's written by Maitreya, right? Do you know, Georgie? No. It's commentary to the Prajnaparamita Sutras. It's commentary to. Actually, it's commentary to the small, the middling, and the great mothers, right? The 3 Prajnaparamita Sutras that were composed that are renditions of that one same occurrence. Not the same time that the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra is different, a different time, right? Do you know what I'm talking about, Michelle? The 3 mothers? The 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita Sutra. I think sometime Lamas may have given the oral transmission of it here. 25,000 verse Prajnaparamita and the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita, the famous long ones. They're all as though they were heard by three different kinds of beings. Some people, when they heard things and they recited it afterwards, they recited it more concisely in 8,000 verses. Other people remembered more things and they said more words, and it was a 25,000 verse. The most elaborate version is 100,000 verse, but it's all talking about the same occurrence. So that's usually what the basis for in detailed study of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, because Maitreya taught a Sangha a commentary to those called the Abhisamaya Alamkara. It was one of the 5 texts of Maitreya, right? So in there, he's talking about 3 kinds of knowers. He's talking about the knowers of knower of all aspects, which means omniscience, the knower of paths, and the knower of bases. So you know what knower of all aspects is what we sometimes we say kunken. Remember we were talking in our Tibetan class. Actually, it's nampa tamche kemba. Knower of all aspects, or just abbreviated kunken, omniscience. That refers to the Buddha's mind. Now, the realization of the Pratyeka Buddhas, the realization of the Bodhisattvas, before they attain omniscience, they have a particular kind of knower, which the Buddhas also have, called the knower of paths, that knows the paths of the hearers, knows the paths of the Pratyeka Buddhas, knows the paths of the Bodhisattvas, and by practicing them is able to teach them to others. So that's a greater kind of understanding of reality. It's not yet omniscience, but it's a greater kind of understanding than the hearers and solitary realizers have, because it's motivated out of compassion, learning these different paths to be able to explain, because sometimes you have to explain the Hinayana to people for whom that is suitable. The Hinayana practitioners have a kind of understanding of, according to the Abhisamaya, their understanding is limited to, say, the selflessness of persons and so forth, or in some, more subtle explanation, the Pratyeka Buddhas also understand the emptiness of duality, like the Chittamatra view. Right? So those kind of understandings are called the knower of bases, the bases of phenomena. So I think this is when it talks about, he's translating, Donna Lopez here is translating just literally. When he's translating omniscience, I think he's talking about the 3 kinds of knowers. Okay. And the 22 similes are, we've talked about this in passing before, 22 types of bodhicitta that are enumerated in the Prajnaparamita Sutra. If you ever get a chance, say for instance, if Aunt Matilda gives you a check, or what do you call it, gift certificate at Borders, or what's your aunt's name, Georgie? Is it Matilda?
I have several aunts.
Yeah.
Aunt Rose.
Aunt Rose. If Aunt Rose gives you a certificate for Borders or Amazon.com or something, you might consider getting the translation of the 25,000 verse Prajnaparamita that was translated by Edward Kanza. It's about yay thick, big book. And that's because that's the intermediate one. The 8,000 also he translated. Maybe it's about this thick. I don't know, somewhere bigger than this. And the 100,000 verse, there's no one who's translated the whole thing. But in there, you can actually trace. You can look at the chapters and you can find, as in the Abhisamaya Alamkara, when it talks about the 22 similes of bodhicitta, 22 types of bodhicitta, you can find them enumerated in the sutra. If you didn't have the Abhisamaya Alamkara as an outline when you're studying the Prajnaparamita, it would be like the Buddha was just jumping all over the place. He said, this is empty, this is empty. Then he's talking about this type of bodhicitta is empty, this type of bodhicitta is empty. And it would seem like there was no rhyme or reason. So Maitreya showed in the Abhisamaya Alamkara this hidden intention, hidden agenda the Buddha had of showing the whole path structure. The hearers, Pratika Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, how they practice, all the different types of emptiness and everything. So I think that's what's being referred to there. Okay. Anyone else? Question? Lisa, you have a question? You look like you're ready to. Huh? Karen, you have a question? No? Mm-hmm. Someone should have some questions. I'm always afraid if no one has questions, I have to ask questions. Thea, do you have any questions?
No.
Huh? Thea. I'll ask Median also.
I did earlier, but then I looked in the book and I found the answer to my questions.
Oh, what was it?
What are the emptinesses, the 5 emptinesses?
What are the 5 emptinesses?
I don't remember. I
What are the 5
and I actually have it
emptinesses?
tagged.
Okay, what are the 5 emptinesses? I'm not sure what.
I was interested because His Holiness spoke of them. At least that's what I heard.
Okay. Which page are you on?
It's on page 53.
Okay. It's good to go here also, but the main reason for having this text is to have the commentary by Denpa Laramba, starting on 139. But anyway, so on page 53,
Yes.
what is it?
The last paragraph begins with the 5 kinds of emptinesses.
Presented by what?
Prasatrasana.
Who's that? Is that
I don't
like
know.
a system or what?
No.
So that's one like Prasangika or something?
No, I don't know who he is.
Prasha. That's it, that S with a line over it. That's SH, right? Prashatrasena. This is talking about an individual, one of the Indian commentators to the Heart Sutra. So he's talking about, so right above that, in the indented paragraph, it says, there are 5 types of emptiness. The emptiness of that which did not exist before, the emptiness of that of what does not exist upon being destroyed, the emptiness of utterly non-existent, the emptiness of one not existing in the other, and the emptiness of entityness. So, just to give some background, usually, are all of those real emptiness that he's talking about? Like if I say this cup is empty of water, it's actually not empty of water, but it's empty of, what could it be empty of?
At least my understanding of
Empty.
it was that he's relating emptiness in relationship to any type of form. And then he goes on to explain in the next page, form is emptiness, emptiness is form.
Here what he's doing is he's mentioning that the word emptiness can refer to different things. And we're not going to refer to all those 5 things. We're only going to refer to one of them. When the Buddha talked about emptiness, he wasn't referring to the fact that a horse is empty of being a cow. Which one would that be of those 5?
Not existing in the other.
One thing not existing in the other. Right? Or the cup is empty of water or something like that. It doesn't mean those kinds of emptiness. Remember, it's sometime when in tenets and in other places we've talked about this word, this phrase, self-supporting, substantially existent. And someone mentioned last time, was it in this class or the tenets class, that they'd read somewhere that it was talking about self-sufficient and or substantially existent, or what? How do they understand it? Do you remember about this? How would you explain? Diana, how would you explain self-supporting, substantially existent? Self-supporting, substantial existence.
Well, isn't that like a head salesman or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea is that the term substantial existence, you have to explain, there are different kinds of substantial existence. There might be 5 or 6 different kinds, meanings of the word. So you have to say what kind of substantial existence you mean, that you're empty of. That you're empty of the kind of substantial existence which is self-supporting. Okay, like if you talk about experience, it would be the sense of a self which was findable, not really differentiated from the aggregates, but not one with the aggregates. This is a gross self, right? The gross self of persons. The reason I mention that is because it's a similar kind of situation here. here there's at least 5, is mentioned in the Prajnaparamita, at least 5 different kinds of emptiness. The word emptiness could be used in 5 different ways, but that's not what the Buddha meant. So he's bringing that up here just to show it's not this other one, it's not that one. Which one would it be? Right, entityness. There are 5 types of emptiness. The emptiness of that which did not exist before. Okay, so my life was empty, and then I met Dorje.
Silly.
Okay, that's one kind of emptiness, right? The emptiness of what did not exist before. The emptiness of what does not exist upon being destroyed. So, you know, your baby left you, or you crashed your car or something like that. It's no longer existing. That's not the meaning of emptiness. The emptiness of the utterly non-existent. So what would be an example of that? Of the utterly non-existent, okay? The emptiness of a sky flower, something that doesn't exist at all. So you could say that that's empty, but that's not the meaning of emptiness. The emptiness of one not existing in the other. So horse and cow, or maybe water in cup. That's not the meaning of emptiness. Or the emptiness of entityness. So he has a footnote, 18. What does that footnote say? That's chapter, the question and answer. This is one of those things. Is there some reason for doing it like this? Academic reason? Okay, it's on page 202. The neologism. Am I pronouncing that right? Neologism, entityness. That's, in other words, he's saying that's not a very reliable word. We kind of coined it recently, right? Is an attempt to translate the Tibetan ngoongi. Ngoongi would be what? Spavava, actually, which could also mean nature, but it's ngoo means entity. Ni at the end means like anta or atta, like shunyata. So ngooni means entityness, which is a translation of the Sanskrit rupatva. Well, he says it's translation of rupatva. It can also be translation of spavava. Entityness is meant to suggest something that is capable of independent existence, to subsist independently of what is the case. It seems akin to what Heidegger calls the thingness of the thing. If you want to check Martin Heidegger, you're welcome. Okay? So this is the context, Thea, that he's talking about 5 types of emptiness there. It's something that the Buddha mentions in the sutras, and you find in the commentaries sometimes when trying to explain what we're talking about emptiness. We say, don't confuse it like, example, the Gompa is empty of monks. The monastery is empty of monks at some time. That's not the meaning of emptiness. Okay? So the meaning of emptiness is that a thing, such we'll say as the cup, is empty of an attribute that seems to be there to our mind, that appears to our consciousness, and our mental consciousness assents to, goes along with, grasps to. A sense of findability, that it exists from its own side, the sense of cup. Now, if I say that, you're going to say, excuse me, George, the cup's right there. It is existing from its own side. What medication are you taking? I just mentioned it because I heard some review of the movie Kill Bill 2 said that Tarantino was obviously on different medication for the second movie, as though he was on some drug for the person. So you might say, excuse me, George, it is there. I mean, how could you say it's not there from its own side? Whether I'm here or not, the cup is still there, isn't it, George? Isn't it there from its own side? Doesn't it exist from its own side?
I really don't know anymore.
In Pasadena, His Holiness a couple of times brought up this issue of some external or physical, should I say reality, something that had a life of its own, a sort of natural evolution of things that's not related to our karma, that's not related to our mind, not.
Oh yeah, that's just talking about, someone asked, are there some things that are not determined by karma? It's not the same question.
Could that have something to do with,
Just what you spoke of, and what Dream is also talking about, that this entityness that we perceive, it goes on further in the book to say that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence and exist only due to thought. This is the meaning of the perfection of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So in the sense that this brings me to the question, is a thought karma, or is a thought,
Well,
what is a thought
sometime when we don't,
relationship to?
if we don't, if we start investigating like that, I think at the beginning it's not as fruitful as trying to understand what's being presented first of all. Then you can go back and ask these questions more usefully, more fruitfully. Is a thought karma? A thought's not. It depends on what you mean. A thought is not karma. Thought maybe. A thought process depends on what you mean. What you mean by thought. The thinking process creates karma. Karma is action, right? So a thought itself, if you're just talking about, depends on what you mean by thought. The mental image or the thinking process. But that's not what's being meant. It's not what's being gotten at in terms of emptiness. What the phrase that you mentioned was very, very relevant, what you read from the text there, that when we talk about emptiness, we're talking about the emptiness or the lack of some kind of existence that we think adheres in things. It appears that way to everyone who is not a Buddha when they're not in meditative equipoise on emptiness. Everything appears to be inherently existing. That is to say, what is that inherent existence? You know, how does it appear? You might say, well, it is existing from its own side. It seems, cup seems to be existing from its own side. But what is cup? Cup or mug? Is this a mug or cup? It's a mug, right? Cup? Okay, I have some debate here. Pencil holder. Okay. Mug is just a concept or name. It is both a concept and a name. It depends. Sometimes it is, you could say it's a name, it's just a concept. What Buddha meant when he said Bodhisattva is just a name in the Prajnaparamita, he didn't mean that Bodhisattva was just the sound. There was no other Bodhisattva than the sound Bodhisattva. He meant that if you look for a Bodhisattva, say Thea is a Bodhisattva or Venerable Dreame is a Bodhisattva, and you try to find what Bodhisattva is, or if a Bodhisattva, an aspiring Bodhisattva thinks, I am a Bodhisattva, you know, they are solidifying something. Bodhisattva is just a concept. Where can you find Bodhisattva? Where can you find the self? It seems, that's what His Holiness mentioned this also in the teachings of Pasadena. The self is, at first, the object that's investigated because it seems so clear. It can be something that can be investigated very clearly, and also it's something that is dynamically involved with our creation of karma. It's very, very important. But once you understand the emptiness of the self, that the I, that carry is just a name, okay? Then you start to get an idea of what it means. You say, well, my body is still here. What do you mean carry is just a name? Well, carry is not the body. Carries not the mind, carries feelings, carries discriminations, or carries compositional factors. What is carry? Labeled onto this mug? Labeled onto carries aggregates on a basis of designation. Once we perceive that and we're introduced, and someone said, oh, this is carry. And we say, oh, carry. We associate that name with that person. The concept carry, or the name carry, that's the only kind of conventional existence that carry legitimately has. Somehow she looks like it. She's somehow that was demeaning Carrie, like looking at her. Sorry, he's dissed you, Carrie. The sense of Carrie. Now, like here in the cup, there are other things that are here. There's the shape and the color. When we talk about cup or mug, you're just talking about the concept that we have, mental image, cup. It seems like someone stole my cup. Where's my cup? When you think like that, you have a very strong sense of a true existent, inherently existent cup that's findable, not just the mere cup that's labeled onto its collection of parts. Or someone scratched my Acura. Is that how you say it? Acura. A lot I know about cars. Someone scratched my Porsche, like a real existent thing. Actually, what is Porsche? Porsche is just a name. Well, I wish Pat was there. Porsche is just a name or concept we impute upon what? Collection of parts. In those collection of parts, can you find Porsche anywhere? Maybe you can find a little plaque somewhere that says Porsche. That's not Porsche. That's just a word, Porsche. What is Porsche labeled on? What is Porsche actually? Is Porsche the transmission? If Porsche were the collection of parts, there's a difference between the concept that Porsche might be the collection of parts or Porsche is imputed on the collection of parts. It's a big difference. Someone might think, oh no, Porsche is not the wheels, it's not the transmission, not the drive, it's the collection of the parts. But the collection of parts is a multiplicity, just as the aggregates of our body is a multiplicity. If the collection of parts were the Porsche, the truly existent, inherently existent Porsche, there would have to be, 14,000, how many ever parts there are. Maybe Pat knows how many parts there are in his Porsche. He probably knows. Several of which are broken. So when we talk about inherent existence, it's important to slowly, as we're studying about emptiness, to get an understanding. Phenomena do exist conventionally. How does cup or mug exist? As a mere concept. If someone says, where's the cup? It's on the table. Well, yeah, okay, which is the cup? And I point, that's the cup. That's called conventional analysis, and that's legitimate. I can point out, and so who's Thea? That's Thea, Who's Louise? This is Louise. But if I try to look, if I'm not satisfied with merely the concept, the name labeled to something, and I say, well, okay, what is Thea? Is it the eyeglasses or the hair? She's got a new hairstyle. Or is it that, what do you call that kind of cloth? Denim jacket. Where is Thea inside? Is it her organs? Is it her blood, her brain? Or then there's the thought, maybe it's none of those things. It's the soul, the Atma. What do we say in theology, in Christian theology? We say the soul, right? Something that seems to be separate from the aggregates, not the aggregates, kind of the controller of the aggregates, the experiencer, right? There seems to be a intuitive feeling that such a thing exists. That is not the self either. We can see when we analyze such a thing doesn't exist as it appears. So we come down to understanding. Once we understand emptiness, it's then that we can begin to understand, once we understand the ultimate truth of the mug, it's then that we can understand its conventional existence. How does the mug exist? It's merely a concept or label designated or imputed up to its collection of parts, its basis of designation. That's the only one that exists, the only mug. You know, what is Eric? Eric is just a name. You know, when we say Eric, something perks up, right? No? Didn't perk up? So it went down? Something perks up. I am Eric, you know? Sometimes, as we said before, sometimes we may associate with our body. If we're you know, we're doing yoga and so we look in the mirror and we think, yeah, I'm looking pretty good. We might associate with it. Or if you look in the mirror, you're not doing yoga and you look in the mirror and say, I'm not looking so good. You might associate with the body also. Sometimes someone criticizes your mind, you might associate with the mind, or someone says, boy, are you smart? You may kind of identify with the mind. But those senses of the I are not the innate, continual, subtlemost sense of the I that's appearing to our consciousness. That's something which is continually independent of situations, this subtlemost innate appearance of the object of negation. Luis, you have a question? Oh, you were swatting away a mosquito. So inherent existence is a sense, or a true existence from the Prasangika point of view means the same thing. There's sort of hypothetical synonyms of these things. It's some sense of existence that our mind is appearing to our mind, and our mind is conjuring up as, yeah, that's how it exists. I really exist. My friends really exist. They're really good. They're really bad. Everything is real to us, except the things we don't think are real, boogeymen. Some things we think are not real. But there's certain things that we think are real, truly existent. So even science, even if it gets close on some understandings, you know, of modern quantum physics and everything, still the real basic feeling is that there is a real, true, existent world. So it's not really touching the meaning of emptiness. Are your taste buds empty? Stomach's empty? Should we take a little break? Let's take a short break. So anything else been dredged up in thinking about this? Yeah.
On page 42, it says, like the second paragraph, the middle of the second paragraph.
It says the second paragraph? Or you mean in the second paragraph?
In the second paragraph, it says, all other beings are incapable of such simultaneous realization. If they directly realize emptiness, they cannot discern the phenomena qualified by emptiness. And so it says it's only the Buddha that can...
So where is this, the second paragraph? The beginning, where is it?
Page 42 in the middle of the second paragraph.
Okay. All other beings are incapable of such simultaneous realization. So what this means is, remember we were talking at the beginning of the sutra, the prologue, where it says the Buddha was equipoised in this samadhi called profound perception. Do you remember this? Is that the common prologue or the uncommon prologue? The Tumomba or Tumombaimba? That's unique or uncommon prologue, right? So I mentioned at that time that one of the qualities of Buddhahood that is not shared by sentient beings is that one consciousness can perceive directly the emptiness of phenomena and their conventional existence as mere imputations simultaneously. The two levels of truth. We say conventional reality. See, every phenomena has two realities, two levels of truth associated with it. They're inextricably linked. They can't be separated. It's not like the conventional truth, you could have one place and separate someplace else, have the emptiness. That's why later it says form is emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. But to us, when we realize emptiness directly for the first time or subsequently in meditative equipoise, all that's appearing to our consciousness is emptiness. Only emptiness itself, the ultimate truth, ultimate nature of that phenomena. The conventional phenomena doesn't exist. So when you meditate on the emptiness of the cup, it's not as though you're seeing the cup and somehow you see it as empty. There are moments like that, bodhisattva, in post-meditation, that is to say, when they're no longer in meditative equipoise. They might be still could be sitting, and still could be called meditation, but they're not in equipoise on emptiness. Equipoise means on one-pointed concentration on emptiness. So they might be either having a conceptual understanding of it or analyzing it. So maybe the cup could be appearing to their mind and they could be kind of understanding that it's empty. But that's not what's meant by the Buddha's understanding. The Buddha's understanding is having the direct realization of its emptiness simultaneous with the direct perception of its conventional nature. Only the Buddhas have that ability. Even 10th level bodhisattvas, although they can have what they would do is they would have a meditative equipoise on the emptiness of some phenomena, and then they would arise from that, and they would perceive the conventional phenomena again, and they would go into equipoise, and they'd alternate between perceiving the indirect perception, the phenomena, emptiness, and the conventional nature of the phenomena. It's said that even in the time of a finger snap, they could engage in emptiness and arise from it and go into it and out of it, many times. What does it say today in the newspaper? Condoleezza Rice, they said they asked her question after question after question after question. That was some quote from some. So that they, up till then, the bodhisattvas can't have a simultaneous realization. In Tantra, we try to train, isn't that one of the points of Tantra, to try to train to have one mind that perceives the two levels of truth, to be able to mimic that. But until we're Buddhas, we can't actually perceive with direct perception, the emptiness of phenomena, their ultimate nature and their conventional nature.
So that's what the Buddha is doing simultaneously?
Yeah, I like that one. Well, wait, how did you do that? Oh, like this. Okay.
That's what the Buddha is able to do. That's what it's meant by discern the phenomena qualified by emptiness?
Yeah, so the phenomena qualified by emptiness means there's no such thing as emptiness existing by itself. Even emptiness is empty. Do you? Like, for instance, you might say, I'm just meditating on emptiness. And I say, the emptiness of what? And you say, leave me alone. I'm meditating on emptiness. I said, the emptiness of what? You have to have some phenomena which is qualified by being empty. Emptiness doesn't exist by itself. Also, emptiness is empty of truly existing. Some of the schools think that emptiness is truly existent, like the Chittamatra school, the mind-only school, thinks that its meaning of emptiness is something which is truly existent. Okay? Okay. So let's go a little bit further in the nitty-gritty of things. So where did we get last time? Where were we up to? We said that Shariputra had asked Avalokiteshvara, how do the bodhisattvas practice, right? He said, how should any son of the lineage? As I mentioned to you, when His Holiness taught, he was reading, when His Holiness taught the Heart Sutra some years ago in Shoreline Auditorium, or Stadium, he mentioned that his version from the sutras, even Shariputra says son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage, but this version that we usually recite, this is the version that usually is recited in congregations. Shariputra says son of the lineage, almost kind of like the Theravada flavor, as though only men could make these realizations. And Avalokiteshvara says to Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this. This is in our Tibetan class when I was talking about chupa, remember activity or behavior? We had necho, the great misdeeds or something. Here in the text it says, anyone who wishes to practice the activity. This is how I translated chupa chepa. So it's anyone who wants to act, practice, engage in the activity, practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom. They should look upon it like this. They should think like this. Correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So we talked about that last time, right? So correctly and repeatedly, this is something like when we were talking in break, Michelle was asking about how it was possible to, when she tried to notice the I, let alone realizing its emptiness, even to notice the I without it disappearing, the sense of inherently existent I, very difficult. You have to do it repeatedly. That's what makes it, because that's kind of the sense of meditation. Meditation has the sense, and the Tibetan word gom has the sense of familiarization, doing something again and again. In fact, in one of the definitions of meditation in one of Maitreya's texts, when he says, what is meditation? Meditation is familiarizing the mind with a wholesome object, with a virtuous object, right? So in this case, you might say, well, that's not a virtuous object. But the purpose of it is to be able to negate that. So you have to first, in order to say a detective, in order to apprehend the guilty party, they have to check who is guilty. They have to find the characteristics, analyze each of the suspects. So you have to look at the usual suspects here in your mind and see if they're really existing the way that they appear. Okay, and you have to do it repeatedly. So here he's talking about the aspiring bodhisattva, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to engage in this activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom. How should they do it? They should look upon it like this. Correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So remember what the implication of the also is? Dorji, you heard several times, all right? Because you've been here all the time. You're like Ananda. You've been to all the... Is it the cracked cup?
That it wasn't just the negation of the selflessness of persons.
Exactly, yeah. That according to the Shariputras, according to the tenets of the Hinayana, it seems, and as their understanding is, generally the main object that's taken for realizing the Four Noble Truths is the selflessness of the person, anatma, no self. No, non-self, you could say. It even doesn't say selflessness. Anatma. Chandrakirti and the other, Nagarjuna, others implied in their text that even the Hinayana Arhats would have to realize emptiness of phenomena also. But what's presented in the Hinayana tenets generally is only talking about the selflessness of persons, and what's being identified is not the subtlest self of persons. It's just what we would, so Prasangika would call the gross selflessness of persons, right? The gross self of persons is being recognized and identified as a self-supporting, substantially existent person. How that appears, as Diana was saying earlier, like the head salesman. But even something more subtle than that is a sense of an I, not the head salesman mean it's on an equal footing with the other aggregates. That's a gross sense of self. Here, it's the sense of self is beyond that, doesn't have any necessary relationship with the aggregates whatsoever. In the grosser self of persons, that self of persons is not identical with the aggregates. It's not different the aggregates. It seems kind of amorphous. That's still the gross self of persons. So that's kind of the implication of what Shariputra may have realized emptiness, may have been a bodhisattva at the time, but manifesting as a hearer. So one has to understand he's asking this for the benefit of others also, right? So that others can see him asking, as a Hinayana practitioner, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, how do the Bodhisattvas practice this? So the Bodhisattvas don't recognize and meditate only on the emptiness of the self, the selflessness of the person. They meditate on the emptiness of the 5 aggregates also. What are when we say also, why the 5 aggregates? Why not, something else? Why not the states, the 50 states? Oh, is it, we have 50 states? 51? How many states we have? How many states are there? 50. I have to ask someone who's recently received their citizenship because they have to learn those things. I forgot, this was too long ago. Why don't they meditate on the emptiness of that? Well, because remember the terminology. Was it Lisa? You were asking about the terminology about the what was the phrase you read there? What was it? Page 39 or something? 49? 42. The phenomena qualified by emptiness. Okay, there's two different things here. That's not exactly the point either when it's talking about the 5 aggregates. Are the 5 aggregates the phenomena qualified by emptiness? Karen, what do you think? Are the 5, when you're meditating on the emptiness of the person, just the emptiness of the person first of all, what is the object that you're focusing on? The 5 aggregates? There's 2 kinds of eyes that appear to you. What 2 kinds of self that appear to you? What are they? No, not talking about subtlety.
Phenomena?
No. When you're viewing your own self identity, there's 2 senses of self that appear. One which doesn't exist and one that does exist. There's the conventional self that appears, but we usually can't differentiate it from the sense of self which is a sense of truly existent self. Okay, say for instance, in Michelle's mind, when Michelle thinks of I, actually Michelle is just a label, just a concept. That does have an appearance to your mind, although we don't usually think of that as having an appearance. Okay? Let's use something with a visual appearance rather than the eye. The cup. The cup has an appearance of existing from its own side. Thank you, Georgie. She's focusing down on the cup. That's very clever. Right? The cup has an appearance of existing from its own side. How does the cup actually exist? What is the cup? Venerable Rennie knows. What is the cup? Is a cup existing from its own side? You know. Meditated years. The cup is just a label or a concept that we attribute to this basis of designation, the collection of parts. So that not talking about the basis now, but just the cup that's imputed upon it is the conventionally existent cup. As soon as we impute that, it seems as though the sense of cup is existing from its own side, as somehow mixed with the parts now. Okay? There is a sense of cup existing from, there's an appearance of cup existing from its own side. That's the appearance of the truly existent cup. There is an appearance of the cup that's merely imputed, but that's hard for us to understand how that appears. Okay? Those 2 appearances are mixed for all sentient beings. Other than in meditative equipoise, we can't separate the 2. In meditative equipoise, all you realize is the emptiness of those appearances. But you can't, generally, you can't separate the appearance of a truly existent cup and the appearance of a imputedly existent cup. You following? Carrie, does it make some sense? So, when you're meditating on the emptiness of the cup, what do you take as your object of observation? You take the appearance of the truly existent cup. You try to localize how that is appearing as truly existent. The same way when you meditate on the emptiness of the person, and you try to recognize through logic that it does not exist. At that point, you're not involved with the conventionally existent cup. That the appearance of the conventionally existent cup and the appearance of the truly existent cup, or the emptiness of the cup rather, can only be perceived by the Buddha. That was another question. But here, when you talk about meditating on emptiness, you take as your focal object the object to be negated, the sense of a truly existent person or a truly existent body or truly existent mind, and you recognize it as empty of existing that way, as non-existent in that way. But why, the question I asked before was, why were the 5 aggregates? Why does he say the 5 aggregates also? Why not the 4 seasons? Oh, that was a rock group a long time ago. I'm joking. Why not the past, present, and future?
I'm not sure, but is he saying more than the self? Like distinguishing Mahayana? Is he describing the Mahayana?
I'm not sure what you mean, describing the Mahayana. I think what it means is this.
What I mean is that he's not just saying the self is empty, or there's emptiness in the self, but that there is emptiness in everything.
Yes, right. That's true. Right. I hope we all are at that point. He's talking about not just the emptiness of the self, but the emptiness of other phenomena. But why, for other phenomena, does he choose the 5 aggregates? Because the 5 aggregates are the basis of designation of the person. The person is imputed upon the 5 aggregates, our 5 aggregates, not 5 aggregates in general. What are the 5 aggregates? What did I got? Frank, I didn't call on tonight. What are the 5 aggregates?
Form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and
Lisa, come on.
I'm not saying it. I'm not
School teacher on top of it. And consciousness.
it's
Right?
consciousness.
So the consciousness means primary consciousness. There's form aggregate, means all of the material of our being. Feeling and discrimination are 2 particular mental factors that are set aside specially, and there's always a debate, why did the Buddhas treat them separately? Because they're very, very important. All the other mental factors are included in the compositional factors, sometimes called volitional formations, samskara in Sanskrit. Not samsara, samskaras, right? Compositional factors. And then primary consciousness. All of these are mental factors. These 3 are mental factors, right, for the most part. Then in the fifth aggregate, consciousness aggregate, means the primary eye consciousness, primary ear, nose, taste, touch, and mental. All of these some of them are instances of mental factors in the eye, ear, or some of them are instances of mental factors in the mental consciousness, but this is primary consciousness, right? We've talked about this many times before, but maybe if you haven't studied before, that's important to know. There are 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are like the parts of the person. So unless you realize not only that the person, say for instance, you didn't really realize emptiness, the subtle emptiness. You only realized that the person was empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent. Then you looked at the aggregates and you would say, yeah, they exist. They're truly existent. you might actually perceive other phenomena as truly existent. So what Avalokiteshvara is pointing out is that to really get at the understanding of emptiness, you have to meditate not only on the selflessness of the person, as His Holiness said in Pasadena, you can apply that, if you have the correct understanding of emptiness, merely by changing the object that you are analyzing, you can realize that is just as empty as the I. If you've only realized the gross selflessness of persons, you try to apply that to other phenomena, you won't get that same sense of vacuity of the other phenomena. You have to understand how the self seems to be not merely imputed, it seems to be inherently existent, not just labeled by concepts and names onto this. Carry is just a name, just a concept. It's like mind-boggling. The way that carry seems to appear to your mind, and it appears to your friends and others, enemies, strangers, how carry seems to appear is like there's a real guy Carrie. We think, oh, I love Carrie, or I hate Carrie, or Carrie owes me $5, or let's go grok with Carrie, or whatever. There's a sense of a real findable Carrie, That Carrie doesn't exist at all. The only Carrie that does exist is one which is imputed upon his 5 aggregates. Okay? So when he talks about here, the Bodhisattva meditates on the emptiness of the 5 aggregates also, that means now he's meditating on the emptiness of the basis of designation of the self also. Okay? The form, my body is empty. Remember in our meditation at the beginning, we meditated in the emptiness of the body? How did you find that? Venerable, did you try that? No, is it this other Venerable? Renee, did you try meditate on the emptiness of the body? Is that something you're familiar? I'm sure you're familiar with, right? Did you get a feeling for that? Tell us a little bit about it. How does the body seem to appear when you're not recognizing its emptiness?
It appears as one thing.
It does seem like one,
which covers all the parts.
Uh-huh.
Something like one thing which covers the parts.
Right. You don't think of many different bodies, but when you start to think of the parts, it becomes unclear. So you have to not focus on the parts so much, just focus on the sense of, like if you think, my body hurts, or whatever. Just try to understand that innate sense of the body, how it is appearing. And then recognize with the same logic that you applied to the self, you can apply that same logic to the body. Does that make sense? It has parts just like the self has parts, is imputed on a collection of parts, rather. And the body really is imputed upon a collection of parts, but it seems to be a singularity. It doesn't seem to be a multiplicity. It seems to be something existing from its own side. So that's what he's meditating, that's what Avalokiteshvara is suggesting to Shariputra there. So later, first of all, he talks about form is empty. Why does he mention form first? Frank knows. The very next line says, form is empty. Emptiness is form. Why does he mention form? Where did form come from? It's like the Prajnaparamita Sutra. Remember we were talking before, it just seemed like Buddha says, this is empty, just like he's going anywhere. It's usually in the enumeration of the aggregates, usually we begin with the form aggregate. And later, he says, after talking about all these things about emptiness of the form, he says, Shariputra, therefore, Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. All phenomena, wait a second. No, I'm sorry. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. In the same way. So in the same way you meditate on the emptiness of the body, the form aggregate, also spend time meditating on the emptiness of the feelings. That's really important because our feelings are what we crave after, isn't it? Good feelings. And we crave to be separated from what's unpleasant. Not just unpleasant feelings of body and taste, but like mental unpleasantness. We don't want to be depressed. We don't want to be bummed out. You still say that? Dorji's good. Okay, he's conversant with the modern. That's old. Aren't you? Aren't you pretty up to date?
I'm kind of antisocial.
Oh, okay. You should be antisocial. Bodhisattva shouldn't be antisocial. Should be social.
It goes from the why in this order the five aggregate. It goes from the grossest to the most subtle.
The subtlest.
Can be understood that way also, yeah. So this is kind of the context. So it's important to get familiar with the five aggregates. Are the five aggregates only the parts of the person? What else are they applicable to? Everything. We learned in some of our other courses, when the Buddha taught, do you know this, Venerable? That when the Buddha taught about phenomena, he said all impermanent phenomena can be encapsulated or surmised or, what do you say, categorized into five aggregates. Not just the person, but all impermanent phenomena. So, for instance, what else is there in the universe that's impermanent that can't be categorized either as material, as feeling, as discrimination, compositional factor, or primary consciousness? Basically, mind and matter. Did I do it the right way? This one side, mind and matter. As impermanent. So when he talked about phenomena, in addition to impermanent phenomena, if you wanted to have a set of things to divide all phenomena, which would include impermanent and impermanent, what would he have to jump up to? The 12 entrances, or ayatana, right? Do you know what the 12 entrances are? Who knows what the 12 entrances are? I'm sure Karen knows. I am sure. You said it's not true. I'm sure. It's true, I'm sure. But you're not. No. The 12 entrances, if you take the 6, they're called entrances to consciousness. So what's an entrance? What are the 2 entrances or doorways to eye consciousness? The eye faculty, the eye organ, and what? Visual form. Remember, we talked on other occasions, there are 3 things, like a tripod, there are 3 things that are necessary for a consciousness to arise. There has to be the object condition, the observed object condition, such as, say, for eye consciousness, visual form. There has to be the dominant condition, in this case would be the faculty, the eye faculty, that acts as the interface between the consciousness and the object. And what's the third condition? The immediately preceding moment, we call it the demataken, the immediate condition. So that's the previous moment of consciousness, say eye consciousness in this case, which can lead rise to the next moment of consciousness arising, comprehending this. So in order for a consciousness to arise, you can talk about just two entrances, or 2 ayatana is the Sanskrit word. In Tibetan, what's the Tibetan word, do you know? Keche. Keche. The 12 keche chuni, the 12 keche, or 12 ayatana. So there's 2 for the eye, 2 for the ear. What are the 2 for the ear? No, not left and right. Smart aleck. What are the 2 for the... No, the ear is sounds and the ear organ. Nose would be odors and the nose organ. Tongue would be what? Tastes. What is it? Sight, yeah. Tastes and the tongue organ. For the body organ, for the body, consciousness, there are objects of touch, tactile objects, and the body faculty. What's the body faculty? It's something that pervades all of the body, even the sense consciousnesses, the sense bases, sense faculties. So you stick a pin anywhere, you still feel, right? Or if someone puts ointment on you, you can feel something nice also in different parts of your body, tactile. You can feel hot, cold. Those are tactile sensations. Rough, smooth, different. In the Abhidharma, it explains different kinds of tactile sensations, perceptions. So what are the other two? Mental consciousness. What's the mental faculty? The brain? Something obscure. In my case, something obscure. So what are the mental objects? What are the objects of the mind? Well, actually, all of the, even as we learned in Mind and Mental Factors, even visual form can, external form can even be an object of mental consciousness for a short instant, even for an ordinary person, although it's not attended to. But in general, when we say the objects of mental consciousness, the entrance to mental consciousness, we're talking about things which are exclusively objects of mental consciousness, such as what? Impermanence, emptiness, other kinds of thoughts, other kinds of thoughts. What's the mental organ?
I think it's the brain.
You think it's you don't think it's the brain.
Why not?
No, I mean, you're acting as devil's advocate, aren't you?
No, I mean, if the eyeball is the organ of sight, the brain can be the organ of thinking.
Well, the mental organ, the mental faculty, is not the brain. The mental faculty is another moment of consciousness. It doesn't have to be the previous moment of that consciousness that acts as the well, it does in the case of the mental. In the case of what do I say? When we talk about the mental consciousness, there's also that previous moment of consciousness that acts as a cause of the next moment of consciousness, but also the mental consciousness itself acts as a continuity for the mental consciousness to arise as something which is clear and knowing. That's called the mental organ. The mental organ is not material. It's not made of matter like the brain is.
When you say sense organ, do you mean what sometimes is translated by sense sphere?
Sense what?
Sphere.
Sense sphere.
Sphere.
You know, is that the same thing?
I'm not sure what's meant by sense sphere. Usually sense sphere would be that which is perceived by that sense, if I understand the English. Like the sphere of the eye. What's the sphere of eye consciousness? Visual form. What's the sphere of nose consciousness? Odors.
You know, sometimes we speak about the 18 sphere, the 18. You know, you speak of 12. Sometimes you speak of 18.
18 dhatus.
Right.
So those are sometimes called 18
Spheres.
elements. Yes, someone might translate spheres, but there may not be a good translation. I don't know. So what's the difference between the 12 and the 18? Actually, you might say, well, George, skip that stuff. Let's go to the Heart Sutra. It's coming. Both the 12 and the 18 are coming right now in the Heart Sutra. So it's good to know beforehand. In fact, first he talks about the emptiness of the 5 aggregates. Then he talks about the emptiness of the 12 entrances. And then he talks the 12 ayatanas. Then he talks about the emptiness of the 18, what are they called? Dhatus or elements. I don't know, spheres, I've never seen spheres. Maybe sometimes translated sphere. Dhatu. Okay, so when I said permanent phenomena, can they be found in the 5 aggregates? No. Can they be found in the 12 entrances? Yes. Where are they found in the 12 entrances? So are they objects of eye consciousness? Or are the eye organ? No. Nose, no. Ear, no. Taste, no. Tactile. But are they the mental organ? No. Mental organ is always consciousness. Are they objects of mental consciousness? Yes. So they are called dharma ayutana.
But some say the object of mental consciousness are impermanent, and some say it's permanent. I think
Yeah, but we're not talking about lower. We're not talking about lower. Lower tenets. Well, that's talking about direct perception. Certainly, even the lower tenets say the mental consciousness can perceive permanent phenomena, but it can't perceive them directly. Remember, from what would you say from ask our mind and mental factors expert? What would you say? How would you explain it?
Can you ask me the question?
It's not clear enough. So, what would the Sautrantika say? Can you, if it is a, what are synonymous? What are the synonyms of appearing object of direct perception? If it's an appearing object of direct perception, it has to be impermanent. The appearing object of direct perception, but it could be indirectly realized. You can realize the selflessness of the person by realizing directly that the aggregates are empty of being permanent. That's what you're perceiving, the impermanent aggregates, and realizing the person is empty of being permanent, partless, independent. You can realize some permanent things, but not as the appearing, not, how to say, you could realize it with direct perception, but not directly. That was the terminology that we learned at the time. Okay, so you can study in mind and mental factors.
So what is an object of mental consciousness which is permanent?
Emptiness. What is an object of mental consciousness which itself, that object, is permanent? How could the mind, what object could the mind realize which is permanent? Emptiness, selflessness, space, the two cessations. Different. All phenomena that are.
So when one says the object of mental consciousness are permanent, we don't mean that all objects.
No, we're not saying the objects of mental consciousness are permanent. We're just saying, if I were to ask, like say for instance, where can I find eyeglasses? You can find eyeglasses on this table, but it doesn't mean everything on this table are eyeglasses. So amongst the objects of mental consciousness are impermanent and also permanent phenomena. Okay? Yeah, no, right, that's clear. Yeah, does the eye entrance, the objects of eye consciousness, can they be permanent? Can you realize permanent things? Well, you can see this, the house stands, keeps standing, you see a permanent house, you can understand permanent things, right? No, that's not the meaning. You're seeing something which is, only thing that appears to your eye consciousness are impermanent phenomena. Permanent things, such as emptiness of the cup or other things, do not appear to an ordinary person's eye consciousness. They do appear to a Buddha's consciousness, eye consciousness, all phenomena. Even the emptiness appears to the Buddha's eye consciousness. Michelle?
You said before that emptiness was empty.
Emptiness itself is empty of being truly existent.
So how can it be permanent?
Why would its being empty preclude it from being permanent? Why would that prevent it? You're just trying to find for something to be.
So maybe I'm not understanding permanent, what that means, what you mean.
Permanent means something which is not a result of causes and conditions, something that from moment to moment is not changing. Like say, for instance, the fact that Michelle is selfless, is empty of a self. It's not as though one moment that self is there and then it sort of gets big, it disappears, it's fluctuating. It's just not there.
Okay.
Cessation is also permanent. When a delusion, an affliction is ceased from the root so that it will never come back again, we call it true cessation. It's not as though it's coming and going and fluctuating. It's gone. It is a permanent phenomena. Okay. So permanent does not mean eternal.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay.
Permanent does not mean eternal because the delusions did exist at one time. Say, for instance, remember we could make 4 alternatives. You know, have you ever played this game before? Carrie, do you remember 4 alternatives? What do we call it in Tibetan? Mushi, yeah. That sounds like some kind of pork or something. What is that called? Mushi pork? Mushi? What is it called? Mushu pork. You know mushu pork? Okay. So it's not mushi. Shi means four, mu means corners or alternatives. So there could be four alternatives between permanent and eternal. So what are the four alternatives? Can you give the four alternatives? Between permanent and eternal? Not necessarily instances of them, just the four alternatives. Okay. No, he's getting permanent and eternal. Permanent but not eternal. No, you did that already. Eternal but not permanent, and neither permanent nor internal. Okay, so there are only four possibilities between eternal and permanent. Something could either be permanent and eternal, or neither permanent or eternal, or permanent but not eternal, or eternal but not impermanent, not permanent. Okay, so let's give an example. What is eternal but not permanent? Mind stream is a good example, because the mind stream is impermanent, but it's eternal. Even from deluded state through Buddhahood, the mind stream continues as an impermanent phenomena. So there's something which is, no, we wanted something, yeah, eternal but not permanent. Okay. How about, what's the other one now? Permanent but not eternal. Can you think of anything, Luis? Permanent but not eternal? Emptiness could be eternal, depends on what remember, emptiness always has to have a substratum or something that is being empty. Say, for instance, the emptiness of this particular cup. I assure you, this cup is not eternal. The emptiness of this cup comes into existence, it's not because of causes and conditions, comes into existence once the cup comes into existence. When the cup goes out of existence, is broken or crushed or burned at the end of the eon. Will this last that long? I don't think so. The emptiness of the cup also goes out of existence. So this is called, the emptiness of this cup would be called a temporal permanent phenomena. It's something which is, while that it's existing, it's permanent. Every instant that this cup is existing, it is empty of true existence. It's not as though one moment it's truly existed and one moment it's not. It's kind of vacillating, alternating like the current or something.
It makes it sound like emptiness is dependent upon the object.
Emptiness is a dependent arising. All phenomena are dependent arisings. In fact, yeah.
Okay, but then even if the cup doesn't exist, the cup is broken, then there's the broken parts.
Yeah, but there's no longer the emptiness of the cup.
Now we have the emptiness.
We have the emptiness of the broken parts, but the emptiness of the cup no longer exists because the cup, the basis of designation, no longer exists. You can talk about the past cup, the emptiness of that, but if you talk about the present phenomenon, the cup no longer exists. So the emptiness of that particular cup no longer exists. Like the emptiness of Abraham Lincoln. If you talk about Abraham Lincoln as a particular person, not a statue, and not the reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln, but just the person who was designated on those particular aggregates who were called Abraham Lincoln, that emptiness no longer exists.
Is that true for any kind of fact that stays factual for a duration and then it finishes?
I don't know.
No,
I know. Let's just go. Let's just go gross level first. When you do something, you have to first get a gross picture, then you can go to detail. So we did something which was eternal but not permanent, such as the mind stream. Something which was permanent but not eternal. Yeah, the emptiness of a cup, let's say. Okay. How about something else? How about the svavavikakaya? What is the svavavikakaya? So let's say your svavavikakaya. Does that exist now? No, because there is an emptiness of your mind stream, but if you're still an ordinary being, that emptiness of your mind stream is called what? Buddha, your Buddha nature, your actual Buddha nature, right? When you become Buddha and all of the obstructions are eliminated from your mind, the emptiness of your mind is called a nature body, the svavavikakaya. So that's something which is also permanent, but is not eternal. right now, that's your future Svavavikakaya doesn't, the continuity of it has not begun yet. Okay? How about something which is, those are two, one or the other. How about something which is both eternal and permanent? No, space is not, the space is permanent, but the space depends on our universe existing and so forth. Emptiness? What do you mean emptiness? Emptiness is, you have to say more than that. Wisdom realizing emptiness is permanent? Wisdom is what? Is consciousness. Wisdom realizing emptiness is not permanent. Not even a wee bit. I'm just teasing, Venerable, I'm sorry. No, wisdom itself is a consciousness, right? Consciousness itself, remember when we talk about the Buddha's mind, the Dharmakaya, there's two kinds. The emptiness of the Buddha's mind is called Svavavikakaya. The Buddha's omniscient mind, which is an impermanent phenomena, the continuity of our consciousness now, that's called the wisdom Dharmakaya. That is impermanent. But the emptiness of the Buddha's mind is permanent. But the Buddha's mind itself is impermanent. It's changing moment by moment. Okay? So what is something, what was the one we were thinking of? Something which is both. Well, how about the emptiness of your mind stream? Mind stream has no beginning, no end. Okay? Can be at certain points it's defiled, like now. Later it's undefiled in the Buddha's mind. How about something which is neither permanent nor eternal? Oh, there's lots of things. Yeah. Gelato. Cappuccino, your car. Anything that's impermanent and not eternal is that, right? Would be analytical cessation may not be eternal, right? Anyway, even a non-analytical cessation, isn't non-analytical cessation eternal? No, it is permanent. No, analytical cessation, real cessation is permanent, but it's not eternal in the sense that it has a beginning sometimes. Okay. So we talk about 12 entrances. So those are called the 12 ayatana, 12 entrances. Also, we talk about, I'm catching the football. We'll also talk about the 18 dhatus. In Tibetan, you know what the term for dhatu is? Kam. Like actually, I think it's spelled the same way as the region of Tibet, like Kam. Kam means element in Tibetan, but also means dhatu. What's the famous Dharma centers called? There's dhatu in the name. Dharma dhatu. It's one of the 18 dhatus is the Dharma dhatu. So when you talk about the dhatus, very related to the 12 entrances. Now with each of the entrances, you add the consciousness also. So you have three connected with the eye, the object or the sphere of eye consciousness, visual form, the eye faculty, and what's the third? Eye consciousness. Then before in the entrances you didn't have the eye consciousness. You just had the two entrances to consciousness, that which doorways that give rise to consciousness. Now for the elements or the dhatus, spheres, yeah, you call spheres. Then nose, odors, those are ear, sounds, ear faculty, and ear consciousness. Nose, taste, touch, easy. How about mental? You have the objects of mental consciousness, the mental organ, and the mental consciousness itself. Where would permanent phenomena be found in the 18 dhatus? Which dhatu would it be found in? Objects of mental consciousness, which dhatu is that? The Dharma dhatu. So sometimes Dharma dhatu in the scriptures, sometimes Dharma dhatu, even though Dharma dhatu in one sense means the objects of mental consciousness, sometimes Dharma Dhatu is used to refer to the ultimate object of mind, which is what? Emptiness, which is also permanent. So sometimes Dharma Dhatu in the Buddhist scriptures it means emptiness. But in general, when you talk about the 18 Dhatus, Dharma Dhatu includes many other things. Eric, you have a big question, I think. No? No question? Okay, concentration. Well, Venerable has a question first, John. Okay.
What is the mental, you said the three objects of the mental consciousness is the object?
No, mental consciousness is not the object.
No, the three dhatus related to the mental is the object?
The object? The organ?
What's the organ?
Is it the brain?
No.
We just went over this before, we talked about the
No,
12
but
entities.
I thought before when we were talking about the 12 ones, 12 entrances, I thought we had understood it to be the previous moment of consciousness.
It's called the mental organ. It doesn't have to be, it's not the same as the previous moment of consciousness. It can be any consciousness that can give rise to that. That next one. It can be an I consciousness that can give rise to a mental thought about it. Right. It's not simultaneous with that, with the moment that we're concerned with of consciousness. Say, for instance, if you started to get into detail, then you have to be very careful because when you have if I have a consciousness of the cup, let's say even with eye consciousness, am I perceiving the present instant of the cup? When the consciousness arises of the cup, is that actually, am I perceiving the present cup? The immediately previous moment. Why is that? Because consciousness, like all of these other phenomena that we usually deal with, is impermanent. It arises due to causes, and it is an effect of causes. Causes always precede their results, and an I consciousness is a result. Okay? So it is actually perceiving the immediately preceding moment of the cup, the I consciousness. So you'd have to, those are like next order when we fill in the details of the picture.
Because I was wondering what the difference between the mental faculty is and the other part of the mental.
Which is called what? It's called remember there are three conditions. One is called the observed object condition. That means like let's say, visual form or emptiness or whatever is the object of mental consciousness. There is the dominant condition, that usually means the faculty, and the immediate condition, which is the immediately preceding moment of consciousness. So it can be that in some cases, maybe one consciousness serves both of these conditions, but it doesn't have to be. Something you have to analyze. Okay, in the Abhidharma, when you study Abhidharma, there's many kinds of qualms like this. Okay, so 18 dhatus also include all impermanent and permanent phenomena. 12 entrances include all impermanent and permanent phenomena. 5 aggregates include all permanent and impermanent phenomena? Only impermanent phenomena. So when we talk about the form aggregate, it means all the form of the universe. Meteorites doesn't mean just your bodily form. But when you talk about your form aggregate, it just means the form upon which we label you. Okay? Thea's form aggregate doesn't include her car, although she might think that sometimes. Okay? It's only those things that are part of your continuum. If she ate her car and it became part of her continuum, sounds like a good idea. Okay, so next time we're going to talk about this quintessential verse. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. These four different statements, and from different points of view. So why don't you take a look in the commentaries about that next time, different interpretations of it. Very, very useful. And then it's applied to the other of the five aggregates, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. Then he says, Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. So we'll get into a little discussion. Here it says, form is empty. Emptiness is form. Some people translate it, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Have you ever seen that? According to our translations in the Sanskrit, it doesn't say that. It says form is empty. Emptiness is form. There's a reason for saying that. But later, he says, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. Why is there a difference? Generally, emptiness is what level of truth? Is it conventional truth or ultimate truth? It's an ultimate truth. Form is ultimate truth or conventional truth? Conventional truth. Can something be both a conventional truth and an ultimate truth? Is there anything which is both a conventional truth and ultimate truth? Look at all these thinking eyes here. No. There's nothing which can be both an ultimate truth. Either something is a conventional truth or it's an ultimate truth. Okay. But so something, for instance, if we said form is emptiness, from the logician's point of view, there would be an error in that, because form is a conventional truth and emptiness is an ultimate truth. Okay? But here he says, Shariputra, therefore, Shariputra, what does he say? Likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. So His Holiness, in explaining that, some other people say, that almost gives kind of a tantric flavor to the sutra. So let's end here and do some research for next time. Form is empty, emptiness is form, and also the in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors. Those are the five aggregates. No consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Those are the six faculties, right? No visual form, no sound, no taste, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. Those are the six objects. There's actually five, but you think there's 6 and 6. Those are 12 entrances. Then he says, there is no I element. This is dhatu, no I dhatu. And so on, up to and including no mind dhatu, and no mental consciousness dhatu. So you can read about that, and we'll continue next time. So let's dedicate the merits that we've created. Due to these merits, may myself and all sentient beings quickly develop the bodhicitta which has not yet been developed within our mind streams. And due to these merits, may the bodhicitta which has developed, the two kinds of bodhicitta, may that which has developed to some extent not decline but increase. Due to these merits. Try to seal that dedication in the emptiness of the three spheres, such that besides the merits not being exhausted, it can't be destroyed by anger, wrong view, and abandoning the God, and so forth. They are causes of destroying the roots of virtue. Try to think of the emptiness of the virtues, the emptiness of the goals dedicated to, and the emptiness of the dedication itself. And although empty, they still bring about their respective results. They still function.